Davin here from Brewbitz.com. Behind the camera as usual we've got James. Say hello, James. Today I thought we would brew up a Bavarian Lager. Now this is a kit from a company called BrewBarrel. It's a German company and this is German ingredients to make up a German Bavarian Lager to a Munich recipe. So we thought we'd give it a go. We've had some tasters and the way that they've sent it to us with the tasters, absolutely cracking bits of kit. So we thought we would give one a go. So what we're going to need to be able to brew it up? Well, first of all, we're going to need something to brew it up in. So I've got my 5-gallon barrel, 5-gallon bucket. We're also going to need a few other things. I've got my simple siphon, I've got a long spoon, I've got a thermometer, my hydrometer and trial jar. I've got something here which is my sterilizer, and here I'm using sodium metabisulfate. We're also going to need some priming sugar, because what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to put this into bottles, so we're going to need enough bottles to bottle it all up. And I'm also going to be using with this some finings. That's going to be enable us to get a really clear lager before we actually bottle it. So once we've got all our ingredients together, we're ready to brew. But I remember there's one final thing you're going to need whilst you're brewing, and it's this. A little tipple of something you've already made. Anyway, let's get brewing. Now we've got all our bits and pieces together, let's take a look and see what we've got inside the box. So, we need to open it up. There we go. And in here, a lot of paper for packing. Okay, we've got a bag full of little treats. Here's our instruction manual. We've got a couple of sachets of yeast. And then we've got 4 little bottles of hop extract. And then our main ingredient. Here we've got our bottle of our malt extract. Okay, what we need to do now is, because this in here at the moment is really thick and really gloopy, when we open the top it's not going to pour. So I'm going to pull off a sink full of hot tap water, and I'm going to pop this in there, and then I'm going to let it sit for about 10 minutes so it becomes a lot less viscous. Whilst the malt extract is sitting in our hot water, I'm going to pull off a kettle full of water and get that on the boil ready for our next steps. I've got my bucket, which has been sterilised, and I've got my long spoon, which has been sterilised, because now comes the fun bit. So I'll take the lid off, and learning from experience, you've got this little black band. Remember to take that off, otherwise it can end up in the bottom of the bucket with all your glue. And we're just going to let it pour. It's quite thick, still very thick. The little squeeze helps it come out a little bit. There we go. Come on. Got it. Now we've still got quite a lot in here, so what we need to do is we need to swirl this out. So what I need to do, something I forgot, I need a jug. And into my jug I'm going to put in a litre very hot water, just off the boil. Now that, I'm going to pour some in, not all, give it a little bit of a swish about. That's released quite a bit. There's still lots to go, so keep going, being very careful because it's boiling water, and make sure you end up with a lovely clean container. Okay, et voila! One clean container. Right, let's pop this out of the way because we don't need this anymore. What we do need to do is I've still got some more water in my kettle. Perfect. And that's another litre goes directly in the bucket on top of our malt extract. Now we're going to need another 2 litres of boiling water, so I'm going to need to boil my kettle up again. So I'll be back in a few mo's. Perfect timing to have a bit more drink. So here's litre number 3, straight in, and litre number 4. Easy as that. Okay. So come on in, James, come and have a look at this, because down in the bottom here we've got all our lovely malt extract, and you see it's all really gloopy still, so we need to stir all that in and make sure it's all combined with the boiling water we've just poured in. Make sure there's no more lumpy bits like that when you lift your spoon out. You keep going until it's all amalgamated. Right, it's pretty much all amalgamated now. You see as I pull my spoon out, there's nothing really sticking to it. So that's perfect. However, come back to me, James, because it's got an interesting smell. It's not too sweet, surprisingly. Very malty. A bit like rich tea biscuits, bit of nice biscuits going on. Not too many hints of Maltesers. Quite subtle to be quite honest, but we'll see how this pans out. Right, now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add quite a bit of cold water to bring it up to our 5 gallon mark, our 23 litre mark. Now I'm quite lucky, I've got an extendable hose, and what we want to do is, come on in, James, come and have a look at this. Ideally we want to try and get the water flowing down the edge of the bucket, because if you can have a look right down at the bottom, James, if we get it to do that, what's going to happen is going to create a huge amount of froth, and by the time you get up to the 5 gallon mark you're going to have froth up to here. So get it to run nice and evenly. If you can't do that, then nice and gently over the back of a spoon or something like that, just to make the passage of water into the bucket a little bit easier. Right, back to me. Time for another more drink. Now I've brought the liquid up to 23 litres, it's time to add our little bottles of hop extract. So you've got to push down quite hard with these to get them open. Hey! One. Oh, interesting. Oh, it's all gone very milky. That's quite peculiar. Hey, here comes number 2. Got a very interesting aroma to these, I'll give you that. Oh, really press down to number 3. And lastly, here comes number 4. So there's our 4 little bottles of hop extract. And what we need to do now is we need to give this a really good stir. Not only to mix in the hop extract, but all of that malt extracts that was sat down at the bottom that we first put in with the hot water, because we've gently put our water in, it hasn't mixed up yet. So we need to get all of that mixed in as well. So we need to give it a really, really good stir. Now ideally, we need to get this going, we need to get this stirring very well, quite vigorously, for about 2 minutes. This is going to introduce some air into it, oxygen, and get the wort ready for the yeast. So keep going with a good action for about 2 minutes. Now, whilst I've been stirring in these couple of minutes, James has asked me an interesting question. What does this hop extract taste like? What does it smell like? Well, it doesn't smell, it smells very subtle of the floral aroma that you get with hops. But he's asked me, what does it taste like? Well, oh wow, okay, that's bitter. That bitterness that you get from hops just whacked in the middle of my tongue. That's really some hit of hoppy bitterness, I can tell you. I will take it away with this blackcurrant wine. I've just taken a sample in my trial jar with my hydrometer, and the specific gravity is coming out at 1.042 at the moment. So that's going to be noted down, and then that will help us determine at the end, because we'll take another reading with our hydrometer at the end, and that will give us a new specific gravity reading, and with a simple calculation we can work out exactly how much alcohol we've got in our Bavarian lager. Right, so let's pull that to one side. The next thing to do is take our yeast sachets, and we're going to pop the tops off and pop them in. Now, because we've got quite a bit of froth in here, come in and have a quick look, James. Because we've got quite a bit of froth, what I like to do is tend to move the froth to one side and then pitch the yeast directly into the wort. Okay, and I'm going to do the second one as well. Otherwise, what you tend to find is you end up stirring and stirring and stirring and stirring, because all your yeast gets stuck in the top of the froth there, like that, you see, and it doesn't actually do anything. But at least now we've got it direct contact. Give it a good stir, make sure it's all in. Nice quick stir. Right. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to take my top and I'm going to pop it on my bucket, and I'm going to press two sides down like that, because I need some gaps for all the carbon dioxide that the yeast is going to make to escape. So this is now going to go into my warm cupboard, but I'm going to put it at the bottom of my warm cupboard, because I find lagers always best to do about 15 to 18 degrees C. So ideally, take your thermometer, and once it's in your warm cupboard, place it on top and try and keep the temperature as close to between 15 to 18 degrees as possible. And this is going to take probably now 7 to 14 days to finish fermenting. So what I'm going to do in about 7 to 10 days is I'm going to take some more readings with my hydrometer and my trial jar. And I'm going to check to see if the specific gravity is remaining exactly the same for 3 consecutive days. Now, as soon as that remains the same for 3 consecutive days and there's no more bubbles visible, I know that the brew is finished and we're ready to move on to the next stages of bottling. So, just to recap, this is now going to go back into my warm cupboard at about 15 to 18 degrees C for about 1 to 2 weeks. After about 7 to 10 days, I'm going to check regularly with my hydrometer to make a specific gravity reading, and as long as it stays consistent for 3 consecutive days, I know that we're ready to move on to bottling. So, I'll see you back in a couple of weeks. It's been 10 days since I put our Bavarian Lager into my warm cupboard, and it's been sat there, and I've been keeping a thermometer on the top, and it's been keeping a temperature about 16, 17 degrees. So it's been down on the floor and it's keeping it nice and steady temperature. Now over the last 3 days I've taken a reading in my trial jar with my hydrometer, and it's coming out at 1.010. It's stayed exactly the same. So I now know it's time that I can move on and I can do to the next steps. So come on in, James, have a look at this, because it's looking quite clear as you saw from the trial jar, but it's not quite as clear as I'd like it before we put it in the bottles. So in the bottom of here we've got quite a bit of sediment anyway. So what I'm going to do is I've got a sterilised bucket down here, and in this sterilised bucket I've got a simple siphon, and all I'm going to do, come on in, James, is I'm just going to pop it in the top nice and gently, and on this end of the tube, have a good suck, and we're just going to siphon it down in, and we're going to let it gradually drain down through. Now on the bottom of my bucket here, James, you'll see I've got a tap. I've already made sure my tap is switched off. I've been there, I've made that mistake before. Anyway, whilst we're waiting for it to siphon, I've got myself here a nice pint of cider to enjoy. So, see you in a moment. I finished siphoning the Bavarian Lager into our second bucket, and it is quite clear, but as I said, it's not quite as clear as I want to have it before we start bottling it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm using some clear finings. There's some different types of finings you can get, but this is my preferred method. And in here we've got 2 bottles, one that says bottle A and one that says bottle B. So depending on the cloudiness of your beer that you're using will depend on how much finings you're going to use. Now I think, because as we saw in the trial jar, it was actually quite clear, I've got, let's say, a medium amount of sediment still in here. So for me, that means I'm going to need 10 ml of finings A, and that goes in now. So all we're going to do is clear liquid, look, slightly opaque. That goes in, that's 1. That's 2. That's 2 teaspoons. So that's my 10 ml. And we need to give this a good stir. Get it all mixed in. Okay. Now we've got it all mixed in, we need to put the top on. And we need to leave it for 1 hour. So leave it, don't touch it, don't disturb it for 1 hour. It's been an hour since we added our 10 ml of bottle A, so it's now time to add our 10 ml of bottle B. Okay, come on in, James, have a look at this, because you'll see not really much has happened since we put the A in. This is the B, is a bit yellowy. So we put our 2 teaspoons of B in. And now we give it a good stir. Okay, right, so that's thoroughly stirred. So what we need to do now is we need to put the lid back on, and this needs to go somewhere cool for 24 to 48 hours. Have a quick look at it after 24 hours, and if it's really clear, perfect. If it's not, I like to leave mine for 48 hours to make sure all the sediment at the bottom starts gluing itself all together. And once it's glued itself together, it's a lot easier to siphon off. So I'm going to leave this now for 48 hours in a nice cool place. And now it's time to siphon it off, and I've got another sterilised bucket here. And in my sterilised bucket I've also got a sterilised siphon. So, just like last time, in the bottom of here now, any particles that were suspended in the liquid, they would have all clumped together and would have all sunk down to the bottom. So we want to be very careful not to disturb that. So just as last time, we pop it just in the top, we give a good suck, and we let it flow. As always, something to keep you happy when you're siphoning. Got a nice bit of cider here. Anyway, see you in a moment. I finished siphoning off our lager into my second bucket, and we've had a bit of sediment left in the bottom. Now getting rid of that, it's going to help us in the bottom of the bottles so that when we pop it off, we're not going to end up with a really cloudy lager. Now, I'm going to want to reuse this bucket because I've got a tap on here which fits my little bottler. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to quickly give this a clean out and I'm going to give it a quick sterilisation. I'm going to sterilise it, in other words. Yeah, I'm going to sterilise it. Now, what I've done now is I've siphoned my beer back from my sterilised bucket back into my bucket here. And the reason why I've done that is because I've got a tap on it and that's going to make my life a little bit easier in a few moments. But the first thing I'm going to do is, before we start bottling, is we're going to use some priming sugar. And this is, I'm using brewing sugar. And the reason why I'm using brewing sugar rather than the sugar you get in the supermarkets is brewing sugar is not as sweet. Lager is quite sweet anyway, and if we use sugar that we would use from the supermarket, it can make it a little bit too sweet. So I'm using brewing sugar to keep the sweetness to the right levels. And here I've got 5 ounces, and all I'm going to do is just pop that in and give it a good stir until it's all dissolved. Now what this is going to do, this is the priming sugar, and the reason why I'm doing it at this stage rather than, some people will say to put a teaspoon in every single bottle. So what I do is, so that I get exactly the same amount of sugar in the lager in every bottle, is I add it at this stage. So then when I actually bottle every single one, I don't have to fiddle about with putting a teaspoon into every single bottle. You saw how quickly it was to put 5 ounces in. Anyway, give it a good stir until it's all dissolved. Now we've primed our lager, it's time to fill our bottles. And here I've got a selection of bottles, and one of my favourites to use is the glass swing top bottle. A couple of others you can use. One of the others I also regularly use is the plastic PET screw top bottle. Very useful, doesn't break very easily. I also like to use some stubbies as well, because every now and then I find somebody wants a half a bottle of beer. They don't want a whole bottle of beer, or in this case lager, so I also use my stubbies. And if I'm on a session and I don't really want to open just one little bottle, I use a litre bottle. Right, so how do we bottle it up? One of the things we do, here I've got my bucket and it's got a tap on. Now if I was just to open the tap up now and pour it in, what you'd find is as it gradually fills up the bottle, a big froth would end up at the top of the bottle. And that makes it an absolute pain in the bum, because then you've got to put the bottle to one side, take your next bottle, move on and keep coming back to top them up. So one of the things I use is this little baby. It's called a little bottler. It's like a little wand, and at the bottom here it's got a special little valve. And what we do, it goes on the end of my tap like this, and now I turn my tap on. And this little valve at the bottom, come down here James, this fantastic little contraption, is as we press the bottle up, it starts to fill up. And it fills up, and up, and up, and up, and up, until we get closer and closer and closer to the top, and you can control, and you'll notice, I can take it right to the top, and I'm left with no froth at the top. Absolutely perfect. It also leaves a little air gap at the top. And that little air gap is perfect for helping the beer to condition. And so we can do it on all different types of bottles, and you can see I've just done the stubby, I'm now doing the glass one, and I'll be certainly doing the next couple as well, the plastic 2 bottle, nearly. You got to keep a good eye on it though. Right, I'm just going to bottle these up. The screw top bottles and the swing top bottles, really, really easy to secure. You just screw the top on and it's done. However, when it comes to the stubby, you're going to need a little contraption like this. And this is a capper. And you're also going to need some little caps. And we all know what these are like, but you might not have ever seen them being put on before. So, all we do is we pop on the top like that, our capper sits over the top, and we, with a little bit of force, ta-da! We have one cap bottle. So what do we do with our bottles now? Now we've got them all secured and filled up. Our bottles now need to go into a warm place for the next, I tend to leave them for about 48 hours back in our warm cupboard, and I want to have these at about 20 degrees. Now what that's going to do is there's still going to be some yeast left in our lager, even though we've used the finings, and that yeast is going to eat up that bit of sugar that we've put in, and that's going to create some carbon dioxide within the bottle. Now that carbon dioxide is going to dissolve into our lager and it's going to make it fizzy, so that in a month's time when we pop open a bottle we're going to get a really good fizzy lager. So these are going to go back into my warm cupboard about 20 degrees for 48 hours, and then I'm going to put them somewhere cool and dark for about a month, and that will allow them to condition, and will also allow any further sediment that's within the lager to start to drop down to the bottom. And then all we need to do is pop open a bottle, or before that actually, because it's lager, we pop it in the fridge, then we let it cool down nice and cold, pop it open, and have a good nice cold beer on a hot sunny day. Enjoy!